Hey everyone, welcome back. This is a follow-up to my recent video about using Starlink Mini in my Tesla Model Y. I've been getting a lot of questions about why I placed it where I did, so today we're putting it to the test. Does placement actually matter? Let's find out. After my last video, a lot of you asked why I placed the Starlink Mini above the rear seats instead of somewhere else like the rear hatch. That got me thinking, is there actually a better spot to mount it? Today, we're going to find out. To test this, I'll be doing a real-world driving experiment, measuring speed and performance while connected to the Starlink Mini. I'll be running multiple speed tests using the browser in the Model Y while driving a 3-mile loop on Interstate 295 in New Jersey. Here's a look at that route. This section of 295 offers a great mix of real-world driving conditions, steady highway speeds with plenty of overpasses, trees, and other obstructions that could potentially interfere with Starlink's connection. I'll be making one pass northbound, then turning around and coming back southbound so we can see if there's any role that direction plays in the performance. For the test, I'll be trying 3 different placements for the Starlink Mini. Over the rear hatch, positioned over the window of the hatchback. In the windshield, sitting on the dashboard right in front of the screen, and then over the rear seats, my original placement. Once we've completed all of the runs, I'll break down the results, compare the averages, and see if my original placement was right, or is it time for a change? So let's get started. Alright, we're kicking things off with the rear hatch test. Right away, I can tell that Starlink Mini is struggling to get a solid connection. Now, I'm not entirely sure if that's because of its placement or if it's just the reality of using Starlink in a moving vehicle at highway speeds, but either way, it's not looking so great so far. One thing I immediately noticed, and this could be a deal breaker for some, is that placing the Starlink in the rear hatch completely blocks your rear visibility. Looking in the rearview mirror, I can barely see anything. So if you rely on mirror for checking traffic, backing up, or just general awareness, this placement might not be ideal. Let's push through the test, run our checks, and see if performance makes up for these drawbacks. So far, the speeds with the Starlink Mini in the rear hatch have been a bit on the slow side. Now we're turning around and heading southbound on our route. Since the Starlink is positioned at an angle in the hatch, I do wonder if compass direction plays a role in performance. Could the angle in relation to the satellites impact the speed? We'll find out soon, because it's going to be interesting if we notice any improvement on this leg of the test. And I also want to clarify that I have Starlink oriented in the same way it would be if it were on the ground, tilted up toward the sky. It is not upside down or flipped in any way. So, if placement truly matters, we should be able to see from differences in this result. Let's finish our run and check the numbers. It does look like we're seeing a slight improvement now that we're heading southbound. It's not a massive jump in performance, but I am noticing that pages are reloading more reliably. Now, whether or not that's just a coincidence or if our direction and antenna angle actually make a difference, it's hard to say, but it's definitely something to keep in mind. It could be that Starlink is just better aligned with the satellites in this orientation, or maybe there was more interference in the other direction. We'll hold on to that though, but for now, let's wrap up this test and check out the final speed averages before moving on to the next placement. Alright, so there you have it. After combining both the northbound and southbound runs, we ended up with an average download speed of 36 megabits per second and an upload speed of 12 megabits per second. At first, Starlink definitely struggled to maintain a connection, but as the test went on, it seemed to stabilize, delivering a decent average for highway driving. That said, biggest downside is the placement. It obstructed my rear visibility, so if you rely on the rearview mirror, this could be a deal breaker. But if you're okay with losing that view and you want the Starlink tucked away in the hatch, this setup is doable, especially if keeping it out of the way of your passengers is a priority. Now, let's move on to the next placement and see how it compares. Next up, we're testing the Starlink Mini on the front dashboard right under the windshield. In terms of difficulty level, this setup is by far the easiest. No suction cups, no mounts, no special hardware. You just kick out the stand and place it up there. It's that simple. But there is a major downside. It's not secured. So if you accelerate too hard or take a sharp turn, the Starlink is going to slide all over the place. And in a worst case scenario, like an accident, it could turn into a dangerous projectile. So yeah, I'm literally risking my life to test this for you. You're welcome. Let's see how the performance makes up for the risk. Right out of the gate, we're already seeing better performance with the Starlink on the dashboard compared to the rear hatch. Pages are loading faster, and both download and upload speeds are noticeably higher, and that's a great start. Of course, we'll still have to compare this to the southbound pass to see if the trend continues, but so far, this placement is looking promising. Let's keep going and see if it holds up. That was a strong first run, with some impressive performance from the Starlink Mini on the dashboard. So far, it's definitely outperforming the rear hatch. Now, let's turn around and head southbound to see if direction plays a role. Will we see even better speeds, or will performance drop off? Only one way to find out. Alright, overall, that was a much better result than we got with the rear hatch. Combining both the northbound and southbound runs, we saw an average of 57 megabits per second down and 14 megabits per second up, which is a 55.6% increase in download speed and a 16.7% increase in upload speed over the rear hatch placement. So far, it's clear that placement does matter, and having the Starlink under the windshield seems to be working much better. That said, there are still some major drawbacks. It moves around a lot, which could be a real issue unless you find a way to secure it. And honestly, I'm hoping that my final placement will outperform this one, so I don't even have to worry about it. Another thing to consider is visibility. Unlike the rear hatch, where the Starlink was tucked away, placing it in the dashboard makes it very obvious. If you leave it there, it could be a tempting target for theft. Now, let's move on to our final test and see if we can find the best spot yet. Now for our final test, we're going back to my original placement for the Starlink Mini, directly above the rear seats. I initially chose this spot because to me, it just made the most sense. It's positioned almost flat, facing the sky, which I figured would give it the best chance at a strong signal, no matter what direction the car was headed. Another big reason, wire management. I wanted to keep things neat and hide the cables in the headliner, and this placement made that super convenient. And as I mentioned in my install video, this spot also does not interfere with passengers. There's still plenty of headroom, so no one has to worry about bumping into it. But now it's time to put my original setup to the test. Will it hold up as the best placement, or have we found a better option? Let's find out. So far, the speeds with the rear seat placement are looking very similar to what we saw with the dashboard test, which is a great sign. Honestly, I'm really impressed that we're able to get high-speed internet while driving down the highway at 70 miles per hour. That's something that not too long ago would have seemed impossible. Now the real question is, can it stay consistent throughout the entire test? Let's keep going and find out. That run looked really solid. The speeds were right up there with the dashboard test. Now we've got one more pass to make, so let's turn around, head southbound, and see if we notice any difference in performance. Will it stay consistent, or will direction play a role? Let's find out. here are the final results with the Starlink Mini mounted above the rear seats. We averaged 58 megabits per second down and 15 megabits per second up. That's very close to what we saw with the dashboard placement, but with one major advantage. This setup keeps the Starlink secured to the ceiling and tucked out of the way. So, based on everything we've tested today, I think we have our answer. The best placement for Starlink Mini in a Model Y is above the rear seats. It delivers great performance without the downside of the other locations. The other placements all come with trade-offs that, in my opinion, just aren't worth it. This was such an interesting test, and honestly, it still amazes me that this technology even exists. Getting high-speed internet while cruising down the highway at 70 miles per hour is pretty incredible. If you'd like to see how I installed my Starlink Mini in the Model Y, check out the video linked below. And also, if you're thinking about getting Starlink for yourself, be sure to use a referral code when you sign up. I've included mine below, but it doesn't matter whose you use, just make sure you use one, because both you and the referrer get a free month of service. Now lastly, I'd love to hear from you. Do you use Starlink Mini on the go? Where do you place yours? And have you had success with different setups? Drop a comment and let me know. And lastly, if you found this video useful or interesting, I'd really appreciate a like. It helps me out a lot. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.